Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Welcome, dear brothers and sisters. It is wonderful to see you in this beautiful venue, and what is more blessed than the venue are the peoples inhabiting the seats of this venue. May Allah bless you for the time and the effort and the money that you've spent to be here with us. We are very grateful, and we ask Allah Jalla Jalaluhu, the Most High, to be shakir, grateful to our individual efforts. Allahumma ameen. There are two types of prisoners in the life of this world. One form being a lot more cruel than the other. You have the physical prisoner, the one who has been detained by shackles and chains, who is within a physical confinement. This is one type of imprisonment. Then you have a second type of imprisonment that is far more harsh and far more grueling. And that is when a person's heart is imprisoned by impulse and desire. Why do I say that it is far more harsh? Because a person, if his body is confined and shackled behind bars, can still be productive. If this person's heart is inspirited, they can be happy and they can do so much. And that is why some of the most celebrated books in our Islamic history were authored behind bars. Whether you talk about Al-Fatawa Al-Misriya by Ibn Taymiyyah, or Iqtida'u Al-Sirat Al-Mustaqim by Ibn Taymiyyah, or Fi Dhilal Al-Quran by Sayyid Qutb, or Al-Mabsut in the Hanafi fiqh that comes in 20 volumes by Imam al-Sarkhasi. That was a book, and they were books that were authored behind bars. So even if your body is detained but your heart is happy, you can do so much. You can be productive. The same, however, cannot be said about a person who finds his heart, her heart, imprisoned by desire, by lust, and by passion. This is the true detainee. And that is why Imam Ibn Taymiyyah, a man who experienced the prison life misery and died in a prison as well, he would say, Al-mahbusu man hubisa qalbuhu an dhikri rabbihi wal-ma'suru man asarahu hawah. The one who is truly imprisoned, the true prisoner, he said, is the one who has been imprisoned from the remembrance of Allah. And the true detainee is the one who has been detained by desire. La ilaha illallah. And when you speak to this individual and you ask them, how is it that your diet has changed? Why are you so absent-minded? Why is it that we look at you but you're not quite there? Why have your sleeping patterns been disrupted? Why are you always so erratic and so irritable? The answer is always, I think I'm in love. But is this the outcome of what love should bring to a person? When you say love in English, in Arabic it is mahabba, and the word mahabba usually has positive connotations attached to it. Mahabba, love, is supposed to bring you happiness and joy. It's supposed to encourage you, push you forward in life. It's supposed to help regulate your sleep and improve your diet. That's what love is supposed to do, mahabba. It's supposed to make you proactive and hopeful. It is something that brings about a brimming smile on your face and in your heart. That's love. But if it's doing the opposite, if it's causing you sleeplessness, agitation, absent-mindedness, wherever you look, you see the object of your desire, you can't focus, study, sleep, eat, drink, you can't do worship, you can't do anything, then this is not mahabba love. This is nearer to the concept of hawa, which we can translate as lust. And lust in our scripture generally has negative connotations. This word hawa, I want you to dissect it with me, brothers and sisters. Let us unpack it for a moment. It's going to feature a lot in our discussion. Hawa, Ibn Faris, the linguist, he says, is a word that has three parts, three letters. Ha, waw, ya. You put them together, hawiya. That we're translating as lust. But there's more to it. He said the word hawa in Arabic has two usages. The first, al-khulu, emptiness. And the second usage is as-suqutu, to plunge, to fall. So the area, let's say from the ground to the ceiling of this auditorium, would be called in Arabic hawa. Hawa. Why? Because it's empty. And Allah describes the hearts of the disbelievers on the Day of Judgment as being وَأَفْئِدَتُهُمْ hawa. Their hearts will be hawa, meaning empty from the trepidation, the fear. So that's one usage of this word, hawa, emptiness, void, nothingness. What was the second usage? To as-suqut, to fall, to descend, to nosedive. And that is why Allah Jalla Jalaluhu said, وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَفَّتْ مَوَازِينُهُ فَأُمُّهُ هَاوِيَةٌ. The one whose scales are too light, they don't have enough deeds on the Day of Judgment, his home will be al-hawiyah, meaning hell, where he will fall inside, he will plunge inside. So these are the two usages of the word hawa, lust. Emptiness and to fall. So why has this word been given to the concept of lust? Ibn Faris, he concludes by saying, لِأَنَّهُ خَالٍ مِّن كُلِّ خَيْرٍ وَيَهْوِي بِصَاحِبِهِ فِي مَا لَا يَنْبَغِي. He said, because hawa by its nature is empty from all good. It is devoid of all good. And it causes a person to plunge, to fall into everything that is inappropriate. La ilaha illallah. Is there any joy in this? And when you ask this brother, this sister, after you offer them some advice or some harsh criticism about their behavior, about their relationships, about their social media browsing, you give them advice. They say, Ya akhi, I just want to be happy. That's why I'm in this relationship. I just want to be happy. I'm looking for happiness. But take it as a rule of thumb, a rule in life. The happiness that you are searching for will never be found in those places that Allah has prohibited. And if you don't understand this, my dear brother, my dear sister, trust me, you will miss the mark of happiness every single time. And that is why Imam Ibn al-Qayyim, he says that any individual who becomes attached to something other than Allah Jalla Jalaluhu will suffer at the hands of that thing 3 times. Will suffer at the hands of what? The very object of love. 3 times. The first time you will suffer at its hand is during the chase, as you try to pursue it. The second time you suffer is after you've pursued it. It's now yours. You now fear that it will leave you. And the third time we suffer at its hands is after it leaves us. Is there any joy in that? Is this really a heavenly pursuit, or is that more of a nightmare type pursuit? There is no joy or happiness. Maybe temporary pleasure, but no long-term joy in those departments and domains that Allah has prohibited. And Imam Ibn al-Qayyim, he mentions the story that demonstrates this rule so accurately in his book Al-Jawab al-Kafi. Imam Ibn al-Qayyim speaks about a man who was standing outside of his home when a very attractive woman passed by. And she was saying, أين الطريق إلى حمام من جاب? Where's the directions to Hammam min Jab? Hammam meaning a spa, a local spa in the area. And min Jab is its name. Does anyone know the directions to Hammam min Jab? So the man, he was now besotted, and he pointed to the door of his house and he said, I think it's here. So she goes inside, she takes the bait, she didn't know. And he follows her and he closes the door. And she realizes that she is in a very unfortunate circumstance. And he begins to seduce her. So now she needs to get out of this difficult situation. So she thinks of a plan. She says, look, and she expresses fake delight. She said, let's make this night worthwhile. Bring us something to eat. Bring us something to drink first. He said, of course, I'm going to bring you everything you want. And he rushes out of the house. And he forgets to lock the door. And he comes back with his shopping. And guess what? She made a run for it. Good for her. Now he lost his bearings. I mean literally, he lost his mind. And he came out of the house screaming, saying the couplets of poetry, يا رب قائلة يوما وقد تعبت أين الطريق إلى حمام من جابي. Where is that tired woman who once said to me, where is the direction to Hammam min Jab? Where is she? Where is she? He lost it completely. He went insane, repeating these words over and over again, roaming the streets hopelessly. And he lived on for many years until now he was reclining on his deathbed, the throes of death pulling out his soul. And shortly before he died, his friends, they gathered around him and they said to him, say la ilaha illallah. Let the last words that you meet Allah with be the statement of Tawheed, la ilaha illallah, because we know those who die upon something will be resurrected upon the same thing, be it a good deed or a sin. Say la ilaha illallah. And he said, يا رب قائلة يوما وقد تعبت أين الطريق إلى حمام من جابي. Where is that tired woman who once said to me, where is the way to Hammam min Jab? He repeated that till he died. Where is the joy in that? Is that a heavenly pursuit or more of a nightmare that we should avoid? Brothers and sisters, I ask you gently, which of the two is happier? You tell me from a logic perspective, not even a scriptural perspective. Who is happier? Is it individual A or couple A who pursue a relationship outside of wedlock, outside of marriage, under the guise of night? Apparently no one can see them. To spend a short-lived moment of pleasure in the haram, in the prohibited, to be consumed by guilt and pain thereafter because they know Allah Almighty said, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا. Don't go near fornication. إِنَّهُ كَانَ فَاحِشًا. It is an abomination. وَسَاءَ سَبِيلًا. And a very evil path to follow. And they know that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam had seen the fornicators in their graves before the day of judgment, burning within furnaces of fire. That type of guilt consumes them. And should someone knock on their door when they're in the middle of the act, they pounce in fear because they know Allah does not approve, family does not approve, community does not approve. Guilt is consuming them. Then should she become pregnant, the pain and regret is compounded. And then should they choose to abort that child, the pain is compounded. Is this happiness? Or is it individual B who patiently waits for the arrival of that righteous spouse to come to them through dua and dhikr and good companionship and friends and community? They wait using salah as their weapon, and dua and hijab and lowering of the gaze and the fear of Allah and masjid and halaqa and Quran, Allahu Akbar, and the prayer of the night. For them to get married in the halal, in an open ceremony where everyone is invited and everyone is smiling and exchanging dua and giving gifts. And then should they spend an evening with one another that night, they are at peace because they know وَفِي بُضْعِ أَحَدِكُمْ صَدَقَةً. There is charity in carrying out your sexual relations when it is in marriage. They're being rewarded. And should someone knock on their door when they are in the middle of that act, they are unfazed. Why should they be fazed? We open the door, we don't open the door because Allah approves of us. And our community approves of us. And family approve of us. Who are we to fear? La ilaha illallah. And then should she become pregnant because of that union, the happiness is compounded. And should she deliver the child, there is a aqiqah, a feast, gifts, happiness, a meal, dua, an extension to your heritage, a righteous boy or girl. Their happiness is compounded. Who is happier? They've sold us a lie when they told us that happiness can be found in the prohibited. La ilaha illallah. لا يستوي الخبيث والطيب. Allah said, وَلَوْ أَعْجَبَكَ كَثْرَةُ الْخَبِيثِ. The filthy and the pure, they are not equal, even though you may be impressed by the quantity of the evil. فَاتَّقُوا اللَّهِ. So be conscious of Allah. يَا أُولِي الْأَلْبَابِ. O people of intellect, لَعَلَّكُمْ تُفْلِحُونَ. So that you may be successful. Refuse the fate of falling prey to every temptation that comes your way, my brother, my sister. Don't be that person. Don't condemn yourself to failure every time a test presents itself to you. Whether it's an image you see, a video that you cross paths with, a DM that appears in your messages, or a smile that you see on the canteen, or a second glance that is given to you in a convention like this. Don't condemn yourself to failure. Every time a fitna presents itself to you, you are above that and you are more than that. And I share with you 2 case studies, a man and a woman who did this so well, mashallah. As for the case study of the man, he is the Prophet of Allah, Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. And you know his story and how it ended. Who found himself in a room with a very ill-intentioned woman. And she closes the door and she invites him to herself. Allah said, وَرَاوَدَتْهُ الَّتِي هُوَ فِي بَيْتِهَا عَنْ نَفْسِهِ. The woman in whose house he was in, she seduced him. وَغَلَّقَتِ الْأَبْوَابَ. And she fastened shut the doors. وَقَالَتْ هَيْتَ لَكَ. And she said to him, come to me. Pause here for a moment. I know you've heard this much. This is not your average fitna. And Yusuf is not your average man, and this is not your average woman. This is a fierce crossroad in the life of Yusuf alayhi salam. Let me explain. Have you thought about the sheer number of factors that would have made the sin possible if Yusuf wanted it to be? Count with me. Yusuf was a handsome man, one of the most beautiful of Allah's creation. He's not an average Tom, Dick, and Harry. Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam was single. He wasn't married, so he had no other way to channel his desire. Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam was a traveler. He was a visitor to Egypt, not a resident. And people shame when they are residents. It's more than when they are travelers. Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam was a slave. He wasn't a free man. So he could have argued a case to respond to the call of his master. And then the woman, number 5, she was a beautiful woman. Number 6, a high-ranking woman who could have covered up the crime. Number 7, she closed the doors herself. She fastened them shut. Nobody was going to see what was about to happen. Number 8, she was the one who was making the advance. He had no fear of rejection. Number 9, she threatens him with prison if he does not respond. Is this your average fitna? Is this your average text message from your ex who says to you, honey, I miss you. It would be nice for us to link up? No, this is on a different level. The fitna was literally laid bare in front of Yusuf. From those 9 or 10 perspectives. And despite all of these things combined, he said, Ma'ad Allah. Allah forbid. Innahu Rabbi ahsana mathwai. My Lord has been so kind to me. Innahu la yuflihu al-dhalimun. Allah never gives success to the wrongdoers. La ilaha illallah. And as for the case study of the woman I promised to share with you, Al-Bayhaqi narrates in his Shu'ab al-Iman that there was an Arab Bedouin woman who found herself in the unfortunate circumstance of being alone with another Arab Bedouin man. And so he began to seduce her. She said to him, because she is righteous, she said to him, Wayhak, woe to you, Ama laka zajirun min karam, ama laka nahin min deen. Where is your religion, man? Where is your honor and your chivalry? How dare you, she said to him. That is the response of a chaste woman. And then he says to her flirtingly, Wallahi la yarana illa al-kawakib. Why are you panicking? No one can see us but the planets. No one can see us but the planets. And then she delivered the thunderbolt of a message. She said to him, فَأَيْنَ مُكَوْكِبُهَا. Then where is the one who placed those planets there? You say to me, nobody can see us but the planets. What about the Lord, Allah, who placed those planets there? What do these examples have in common? Both Yusuf alayhi salam and this woman, they saw Allah Almighty before their very eyes, figuratively speaking, and they imagined the standing before their Lord on the day of judgment, and so they withdrew, they refrained. And Allah praises these individuals, and He says about them, وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ. As for the one who fears the standing before his Lord, وَنَهَى النَّفْسَ عَنِ الْهَوَى, and restrains his soul from the impermissible desire, the hawa. Did you hear it? فَإِنَّ الْجَنَّةَ هِيَ الْمَأْوَى. Good news, paradise will be the home. Who is this person? Our scholars have described him and her. Ibrahim al-Nakha'i and Mujahid and others have said, هُوَ الرَّجُلُ يهم بالمعصية فيذكر مقامه بين يدي الله تعالى فيتركها خوفا من Allah. It's in reference to a person who was on the verge of disobeying Allah and then remembers his standing before his Lord, and so they walk away from that sin out of fear of Allah. Lastly, for those who say that I am currently entangled in a haram relationship, I am a victim of some sort of obsession with the opposite gender, I am an addict even to perhaps images, or someone may say pornography, I've put myself in a situation and I know I am to be blamed for it, but my heart is drunk on lust. What do I do to free myself and to rediscover Allah and the world and the afterlife? I suggest for you and for me, dear brother, dear sister, a medicine that is made up of 7 components. It is 100% recovery rate. For those who are sincere and for those who are persistent in applying these 7 components. Take note of them, use your phones if you need to. The first component of this medicine to bring yourself out of desire and into the expanse of Islam and Iman, the first component is the lowering of the gaze. Nothing comes before this. كل الحوادث مبدأها من النظر ومعظم النار من مستصغر الشرر. Ibn al-Qayyim, he says, every calamity begins with the glance, and most wildfires begin with a spark. La ilaha illallah. One who complains of being chastised by lust and desire, but insists on not changing their habits when it comes to gaze, is like a person who is complaining of a draft and he's refusing to close the door. It's not going to change. It begins here, closing this huge gate to your heart called the eyes. That is where it begins. And you will say to me, it's tough. I'll say to you, I know. But Imam Ibn al-Qayyim, he says, الصبر على غض البصر أيسر من الصبر على ما بعده. The patience needed to lower the gaze is less than the patience needed for the consequences that follow if you don't follow your gaze, if you don't lower your gaze. The consequences, or the pain that is needed, the patience that is needed to lower your gaze is less than the patience that is required towards the consequences that follow if you don't lower your gaze. That's number 1. Component number 2 of this medicine, marriage. If it is, religiously speaking, and from a family perspective speaking, feasible for you to marry this individual whom you are communicating with, and things add up, then marriage should be the immediate go-to. The Prophet ﷺ said, لَمْ يُرَى لِلْمُتَحَبِّينَ مِثْلُ النِّكَاحِ. There is nothing like marriage for 2 who love one another. There is nothing, he said, like marriage for 2 who love one another. How is it that the very same fire that destroys nations and burns up livelihoods and kills people is the same fire that happens to heat up our buildings and cooks our food? How come? Well, because the first fire that destroys people was an untamed fire, unrestricted fire, uncontrolled, unchanneled, unguided, and so it killed and destroyed. Whereas the second fire that we benefit from, it comes to us through channels, pipes, cylinders. It's guided, it's limited. And so we grow and we eat, and we are warm and we are happy. The same can be said about relationships and sex. If it breaks free from the confines of Sharia, and it is outside of the parameters of a halal Islamic marriage, it burns, it injures, it causes regret, and it causes a scorching heat in this world and in the hereafter. Whereas when it is channeled through an Islamic marriage, it causes growth, it causes happiness, it brings about a joy. I swear by Allah, that is perhaps only second place to the joy of knowing Allah Jalla Jalaluhu. Marriage, if it is feasible. If, however, you discover that marriage is not feasible for one reason or another, religiously speaking, or from a family perspective, i.e., for example, you need to run away with this girl and take her away from her father and against the will of her family for this marriage to happen, etc., then you walk away from the relationship if marriage is not feasible. Don't give farewells. Don't give her a farewell conversation. Don't give her an Islamic sermon how this is for the sake of Allah. Don't do any of that, because you will go back and fall weak. Change your number, delete the number, block the number, change the phone if you need to. I'm sorry for saying this. Change your scenario, lock the door, throw away the key. And with time you will recover, I promise. With time you will rediscover yourself and rediscover Allah and rediscover the home of the hereafter and rediscover the bigger picture of life. Al-bu'du jafa. Because distance is dryness, as Ibn Taymiyyah said. Distance causes dryness. وَمَتَى قَلَّ الذِّكْرُ ضَعُفَ الْأَثَرُ فِي الْقَلْبِ. And whenever you stop remembering something frequently, its effects on the heart will be released. That's number 2, marriage if feasible. Number 3, to help you overcome this lust, to help us overcome it, remember the deficiencies of the beloved. La ilaha illallah. One poet, he says, لو فكر العاشق في منتهى الذي يسبيه لم يسبيه. If one was to recall the defects of the beloved, this person would no longer be besotted. Recall the defects. Yes, some people, they require genuine advice. I appreciate that. Other people need to be grabbed and told, get a grip, man. Like, get a grip. What is it, an angel? It's a human being. It's a man, it's a woman, insan, deficient. Relax. Why are you losing sleep? Why are you losing weight? It's a human being. Just in case you forgot, this person belches, burps, defecates, I'm sorry to say, urinates, vomits, menstruates. This person has bodily hair in all sorts of interesting places. This person has a horrible body odor if it's not controlled through baths and showering and perfumes. This person has all sorts of disgusting habits that have been carefully curated and edited and photoshopped and obscured during the courting phase through the masks of obsession. No, there's more to it. Relax. Remember the deficiencies of the beloved. And that's why Ibn Taymiyyah, he said, Al-ishqu huwa fasadul idraki wal ma'rifati wal ilm. Passion, he said, obsession by definition is the corruption of knowledge and perception and imagination. He said lust, passion, by definition, is the corruption of knowledge. It's not true, and imagination and perception. That's number 1. That's number 3. Remember the deficiencies of the beloved. Number 4, remember the perfection of what awaits in Jannah. That will help us overcome it. And that is why the Prophet ﷺ describes both the men and women in Jannah. Because we're humans. What awaits us over there? The Prophet ﷺ describes, first of all, the men of Jannah. He said, يُعْطَى الرَّجُلُ أو إن الرجل من أهل الجنة يعطى قوة 100 رجل في المأكل والمشرب والشهوة والجماع. Men in Jannah are given the strength of 100 men with respect to eating and drinking, desire and marital relations. They are jurda, free of all bodily hair. Murda, free of this. No more beards. That's in Jannah. Don't rush it in dunya, my brother. Put down the shaver. Murda, no beards. He is akhal. His eyes are anointed with kuhul, filled with vitality and strength and vibrancy and energy and excitement. These are the men of Jannah, created in the form of our father Adam alayhi salatu wassalam. La ilaha illallah. As for the women of Jannah, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, لو أن امرأة من أهل الجنة طلعت إلى أهل الأرض لأضاءت ما بينهما ولملأته ريحا ولنصيفها على رأسها خير من الدنيا وما فيها. If a woman from paradise was to overlook into the people of this world, the beauty of her face would illuminate everything between the heavens and the earth, and she would fill it with her beautiful scent. That's a glance. And then he said the garment that she wears on her head for beauty is better than the world and everything within it. If that is the garment on her head, then what about the beauty and the splendor and perfection of the individual beneath it? Remember the perfection of what awaits in Jannah. Number 4. Number 5 of this medicine. Realize that Allah Jalla Jalaluhu will not leave you empty-handed when you make the decision to walk away. If you think that you're going to break this relationship and walk away and Allah will leave you scot-free with nothing to look out for, and nothing to be excited for, and that your DHL has not already been dispatched, you have thought bad thoughts about Allah Jalla Jalaluhu. No, the replacement, the alternative is already on its way. And that is why Abu Qatada and Abu Dahma, they said, we went to an Arab Bedouin man and we said to him, have you ever heard the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam say anything? And he said, yes, I heard him say, إِنَّكَ لَن تَدَعَ شَيْئًا لِلَّهِ إِلَّا أَبْدَلَكَ اللَّهُ بِهِ مَا هُوَ خَيْرٌ لَكَ مِنْهُ. Whenever you leave something for the sake of Allah, Allah will replace it with something that is better. That is a promise of Allah and you better believe it. Number 6, before I conclude with the 7th, fill your life with life and afterlife defining activity. Don't keep your heart empty, because that will then become prone to every satanic whispering, every devilish thought, and every doubt in the religion. Many times the reason why we fall captive to these images and these conversations and these messages that come our way is not because we're weak. It's because our hearts are empty. There is nothing there. So anything can settle. The poet, he said, أتاني هواها قبل أن أعرف الهوى فصادف قلبا خاليا فتمكنا. Her love came to me before I knew what love was, but it met an empty heart, and so it resided, an empty heart. Brothers, they ask, how is it that we have so few narrations that deal with hormonal youth? How to address our children who are now teenagers and they're looking to the opposite gender. How come the hadith does not speak much about this age range? I say to you, because the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not deal with it verbally. He dealt with it practically by giving those young men and young women projects to think about. So they were not going to be slowed down by no petty appetite in haram. Abdullah ibn Abbas, young man, you are responsible for tafsir. Abu Hurairah, young man, you're responsible for hadith. Khalid ibn Walid, you pick up the sword, jihad is your position. Usama ibn Zayd, 17, 18-year-old, no problem, you lead an army against the Roman Empire. Ja'far, you make your way to Abyssinia, give da'wah. Mus'ab, you go to Yathrib, Medina, give da'wah. Mu'adh ibn Jabal, you go to Yemen, give da'wah. Allahu Akbar. He activated within them a sense of purpose, a goal, a vision. What is your vision in life? And that became such a powerful light that it obscured every other appetite and haram. They refused to be slowed down by the impermissible. Number 7, and I conclude with this. Call upon Allah for help. And cry your eyes out to Allah and ask Him, if you don't turn away from me these desires, Ya Allah, I will be weak. There will be a point where I, Ali, will say to you, I have no answers. Mufti Menk, Omar Suleiman, Bilal Asad, and others, there will be a point when they say, we don't have answers for you. But guess what? We'll signpost you to someone who does. He is there, Allah fi sama, in the heavens. Make dua. And that is why Yusuf alayhi salam, what did he do? When they conspired against him, the women, he raised his hands and he said, وَإِلَّا تَصْرِفْ عَنِّي كَيْدَهُنْ أَصْبُ إِلَيْهِنَّ وَأَكُمْ مِنَ الْجَاهِلِينَ. My Lord, if you don't turn away from me, they're plotting, I will become weak, and then I will be from the ignorant ones. What was the answer? What was the outcome? فَاسْتَجَابَ لَهُ رَبُّهُ. So his Lord responded to him. فَصَرَفَ عَنْهُ كَيْدَهُنْ. And he averted from him their plotting. إِنَّهُ هُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. He is the hearing and he is the knowing. In conclusion, dear brothers and sisters, man by his nature, he has a tendency to look for happiness where it is easiest to search for it, not where it is actually found. And I say this because when all is said and done, the ultimate remedy for lust and haram impulses is to love Allah Jalla Jalaluhu. Find a way to love Him. Because becoming attached to people is pain and injury and a scorching heat and regret. And becoming attached to Allah is relief, pain, and is relief and a cure from pain and tranquility and inner expanse. And when you discover that Allah, whom you then love, you will discover a Lord who is not obsessed with your habits, but a Lord who wants from you your heart. And once you give Him your heart, He will then take care of your habits. وصلى الله على نبينا محمد والحمد لله رب العالمين والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.